Welcome back to our channel. Collect the iconic $quarter coin, rich in history, value, and a true American symbol. In the heart of the late 1970s, America was in the midst of significant changes. The world was shifting, and so was the country's landscape. The 1970s was a decade of political turbulence, economic shifts, and cultural revolutions. While the nation's headlines were dominated by the space race, the Vietnam War, and the Watergate scandal, there was another, quieter revolution taking place, one that would capture the attention of coin collectors for generations to come. This story begins with the humble $quarter. At the time, the U.S. Mint had been striking quarters for over 200 years. The design of the quarter had been through several iterations, but by the 1970s, the coin had already established itself as a symbol of American coinage. However, the 1978 quarter would go on to be more than just another coin in circulation. It would become a highly coveted item for numismatists, due to a combination of historical significance, minting nuances, and a striking design that would eventually make it a key player in the world of rare coins. Let's rewind to the creation of the 1978 quarter. The design was still based on the beloved John Flanagan portrait of George Washington that had graced the obverse side of the coin since 1932. The reverse side of the coin, meanwhile, featured a majestic eagle, clutching arrows, and an olive branch, a representation of American strength and peace. This design had become the standard for the quarter, and it would be used until 1998 when the 50-state quarters program was introduced. Yet, it was the 1978 quarter that would emerge as a standout coin in U.S. minting history, due in large part to a set of subtle yet significant errors that would later capture the attention of collectors. While many of the coins struck in 1978 were relatively standard, there were a handful of coins with distinct imperfections that made them a rare find in the years to come. A mistake in the die process, where the engraving was not as sharp as intended, led to a small batch of quarters having certain elements of their design appear fuzzy or blurry. These error coins, when first released, were just a small curiosity to those who worked in the coin industry. However, for collectors, these blurry quarters would soon become an obsession. What was it about these 1978 quarters that made them so valuable, you ask? It's not just about the error itself, although the die deterioration and the soft strikes added an element of rarity to the coins. What made these quarters stand out even further was the incredibly low mintage numbers of these error coins. As the U.S. Mint sought to rectify the issue of blurry coins, many of these error-struck quarters were pulled from circulation or melted down. This made the surviving error coins exceedingly rare. The scarcity of these error-struck coins, coupled with the unique nature of the problem, sparked a frenzy in the numismatic community. The discovery of a soft-strike 1978 quarter became akin to finding a hidden gem. Coin collectors who were aware of the issue began searching for these rare pieces, and what started as a curiosity soon evolved into a full-fledged pursuit. This is when the 1978 quarter began to rise in the ranks of collectible coins. Fast forward a few years, and collectors began to notice that the 1978 quarter wasn't just a rarity in terms of its errors, but that the historical context behind the coin also played a key role in its allure. The 1970s were a transformative period for the United States. The decade saw changes in the economy, society, and the role of the United States in the world. Coins struck during this period carried the weight of a nation in transition, and the 1978 quarter became a symbol of that moment in time. To many, it represented the final years before the country would experience the economic struggles of the 1980s and the cultural shifts that would follow. This connection to history added to the coin's appeal. As the years passed, the value of the 1978 quarter continued to rise. What had once been a coin worth just 25 cents, now became a valuable piece of numismatic history. Collectors were beginning to pay attention not just to the error coins, but also to the overall condition of the pieces. Coins that had remained in circulation for decades were subject to wear and tear, but those that had been well preserved, particularly those with the error, became increasingly desirable. The pristine examples of the 1978 error coins were few and far between, which made them even more valuable in the eyes of collectors. The key factor in determining the value of the 1978 quarter, especially the error variety, was its condition. As is often the case in numismatics, a coin's value is not just about rarity, but about how well it has been preserved over time. The better the condition, the higher the price a collector is willing to pay. Coins that show little to no wear, particularly those that retain their original sheen and detail, are much more valuable than those that have been exposed to the elements and handled for years. The 1978 quarter was no exception to this rule, and as demand grew, the prices continued to climb. While many of these coins remained in circulation for decades, it wasn't until the rise of the internet and online auction platforms that the true value of these rare 1978 quarters began to be fully realized. Previously, collectors would have had to visit coin shops or attend trade shows to find these coins, but now, they could bid on them from the comfort of their own homes. The emergence of online platforms like eBay opened up the world of numismatics to a much broader audience, and demand for the 1978 quarter grew even more. This, of course, drove prices higher. In today's market, a 1978 quarter with the characteristic die error and in good condition can fetch an impressive price. The value of the 1978 quarter, particularly the error-struck coins, is in large part due to the rarity of these pieces and the demand from collectors. Coins with the most prominent errors, especially those in exceptional condition, have been known to sell for well above their face value, but the most astonishing part of this story is the sheer value that some of these coins have commanded at auction. One such coin, a 1978 quarter that displayed the well-known error, was sold for an astonishing $148,000. Yes, you read that correctly. A quarter that originally had a face value of just 25 cents is now worth a staggering $148,000. How did this happen? How did a coin with such a modest face value become one of the most valuable in U.S. coinage? It all comes down to rarity, condition, and the story behind the coin. The 1978 quarter is not just a piece of currency, it's a tangible piece of American history. It's a reflection of a pivotal moment in time, a moment when the U.S. was transitioning into a new era. And for collectors, it represents a rare opportunity to own a piece of that history, one that has only grown in value as time has passed. For those who own a 1978 quarter, or for those lucky enough to find one, the coin has become more than just a collector's item. It is a treasure, a symbol of how the world of coin collecting can take something as seemingly insignificant as a piece of currency and turn it into a multi-thousand-dollar investment. In conclusion, the 1978 quarter is a prime example of how even the most humble of coins can carry immense value in the world of numismatics. What began as just another quarter struck by the U.S. Mint has now become a symbol of rarity, history, and collector passion. And while the vast majority of 1978 quarters remain in circulation, there are those few, rare examples that have become highly sought-after treasures. For those who are lucky enough to own one of these coins, they have a piece of American history in their hands, one that's worth a remarkable $148,000. So, the next time you come across a coin, don't just toss it aside. You never know, it could be the next big discovery in the world of numismatics. After all, coins like the 1978 quarter don't just happen every day. The year was 1994, and America was living in a moment of change. The economy was bustling, and the world was shifting rapidly into the digital age. While major news stories like the O.J. Simpson trial, the launch of the World Wide Web, and the signing of the North American Free Trade Agreement dominated the headlines, another story quietly unfolded in the background, one that involved a small but incredibly significant piece of American currency. The 1994 $quarter coin, the U.S. Mint, as always, was at the heart of the American monetary system, ensuring that coins of all denominations were being produced to meet the needs of everyday Americans. The quarter, one of the most recognizable coins in the nation's coinage, had been in circulation for over 200 years by the time 1994 rolled around. While most of the American public took little notice of the quarters they spent, a select group of individuals would come to realize that the 1994 quarter contained something quite special, an opportunity for collectors to score a rare treasure that could go on to become one of the most valuable coins in American history. To fully understand the significance of the 1994 quarter, we need to take a look at the coin's design and production. By the early 1990s, the quarter's design was still based on the timeless image of George Washington, the first president of the United States, who had been featured on the coin since 1932. This design, created by artist John Flanagan, had become the iconic symbol of the quarter and remained unchanged for decades. On the obverse side, we could find Washington's profile, with the inscription "Liberty" above, the year of minting, and the national motto, "In God We Trust." The reverse side depicted an eagle perched on an olive branch, a symbol of peace and strength, with the inscription United States of America and the words quarter dollar. Though the 1994 quarter was produced with this classic design, it was during this period of production that something unusual happened. As with any coin struck by the U.S. Mint, the quality of each piece depended on a range of factors, from the dies used to strike the coin to the quality control processes in place to ensure that only the finest specimens reached the public. However, in 1994, a small error occurred during the production of the quarters, one that would go unnoticed by the general public at first, but one that would come to define the coin's lasting appeal among collectors. This error, often referred to as the 1994 double die error, became one of the most important factors in the rise of the coin's value. A double die error occurs when a coin is struck by a die that has been misaligned during the minting process. This misalignment causes certain elements of the coin's design to be doubled, or, in other words, they appear to be duplicated in the final strike. In the case of the 1994 quarter, this error was most noticeable in the inscriptions on the obverse side of the coin. The words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" appeared to have a faint, doubled appearance, giving the coin a unique and unmistakable look. At first glance, the 1994 quarter may have seemed like any other coin. After all, many quarters were produced every year with minor imperfections, and such errors were not necessarily rare or valuable. However, when a few sharp-eyed collectors noticed the double die effect, they began to realize that this 1994 coin was something special. The word quickly spread through numismatic circles, and soon, collectors began scouring their change and coin rolls in search of this elusive, rare find. Despite its initial rarity, the 1994 double die quarter was still relatively easy to overlook. Most people simply didn't pay much attention to their change, and the error was subtle enough that it wasn't immediately obvious unless you knew what to look for. However, as more and more collectors became aware of the error, the demand for these rare pieces grew. People began to understand that the 1994 double die quarter was not just a minor mistake, it was a valuable piece of American coinage history, a coin that stood apart from all the others produced during that time. With the increasing demand, the value of the 1994 double die quarter began to rise steadily. As collectors fought to get their hands on one of these rare coins, the price continued to climb. A quarter that had once been worth just 25 cents was now commanding much higher prices in the collector's market. The interest surrounding the coin didn't stop with its rarity, either. Many collectors were drawn to the coin's historical significance, as the 1990s marked the tail end of the traditional designs for U.S. coins before the introduction of new programs like the 50-state quarters and the America the Beautiful Quarter series. The 1994 quarter was one of the last to feature the classic Washington design, making it an important piece in the transition of U.S. coinage, but it wasn't just the error itself that contributed to the value of the 1994 quarter. As with all valuable coins, the condition in which it was preserved played a major role in determining its worth. Coins that had been kept in pristine condition, those that had avoided the normal wear and tear that comes with everyday circulation, were the ones that garnered the most attention from collectors. A coin in mint state condition, with little to no visible signs of use, was especially sought after, as such coins were rare to find and highly prized. In fact, as demand for the 1994 double die quarter grew, prices began to soar. The auction market was where the true value of the coin became apparent, with collectors willing to pay a premium to own a piece of numismatic history. What had once been a small curiosity among coin enthusiasts soon became a sought-after treasure in the world of American coinage, and then, something incredible happened. A particularly well-preserved example of the 1994 double die quarter was sold at auction for an eye-popping $128,000. Yes, you read that correctly. A quarter that had originally been worth just 25 cents was now worth a staggering $128,000. This remarkable price set a new benchmark for the 1994 quarter's value, proving that the most unexpected coins could sometimes bring in astronomical amounts of money. But what makes the 1994 double die quarter so valuable? It all comes down to rarity, condition, and the story behind the coin. The double die error makes the coin stand out among the millions of other quarters that were produced in 1994, and the condition in which these coins are found makes them even more desirable to collectors. Over time, collectors have come to see the 1994 double die quarter as a symbol of the power of numismatics, a reminder that even the smallest mistake in the minting process can lead to something incredibly valuable. the rise in the value of the 1994 quarter has also sparked renewed interest in other era coins from the 1990s. Collectors who had once overlooked these coins began to examine their collections more carefully, searching for similar mistakes or unusual characteristics that could lead to future windfalls. The 1994 double die quarter became an iconic example of how rarity, historical significance, and a little bit of luck can turn a seemingly mundane coin into a treasure. As with many rare coins, the story of the 1994 quarter is a testament to the fascinating world of coin collecting. It shows that, even in the age of digital payments and credit cards, the allure of tangible pieces of history still holds strong. For collectors, the 1994 double die quarter is more than just a coin, it's a piece of the past, a link to a moment in time when small mistakes led to big rewards. So, what's the takeaway from all this? The next time you receive a quarter, take a closer look at it. You never know. You might be holding a rare 1994 double die quarter that could be worth far more than the 25 cents printed on its face. In the world of numismatics, you just never know when you might stumble upon a coin worth $128,000. And that's the story of the 1994 quarter, a coin that went from being a simple, everyday item to one of the most valuable and sought-after coins in the world. In the early 19th century, a new state was admitted to the Union, and it would soon play a pivotal role in shaping the American landscape. Michigan, admitted as the 26th state in 1837, had a history deeply intertwined with the growth of the nation. With its vast natural resources, abundant lakes, and vital position in America's Industrial Revolution, Michigan quickly became a powerhouse state. However, not many realize how Michigan's history also left an imprint on one of the most unique quarters in American coinage, the 2004 Michigan State Quarter. The United States Mint's 50 State Quarters program, launched in 1999, was an ambitious project designed to honor each of the 50 states with a unique quarter. By the time 2004 arrived, Michigan had already secured its place in the series, and its quarter would quickly become a standout in the eyes of collectors. But like many rare coins, this quarter's true value would not be immediately apparent. In fact, its historical significance and the subtle errors in its production would make it a treasure to be sought after by numismatists years later. Let's take a moment to examine the context surrounding the release of the 2004 Michigan State Quarter. The year 2004 was a pivotal time in American history. The U.S. was in the midst of an intense election year, and the country was grappling with economic challenges, as well as the ongoing wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. At the same time, the 50 State Quarters program was well underway, having begun 5 years earlier, and it was quickly becoming a sensation. Each year, 5 new states were honored, and the design for each state's quarter was created to reflect the unique qualities and history of that state. The Michigan Quarter, released in 2004 as the 26th in the series, would feature an image that would forever tie the state to its legacy of water and industry. The design, created by Michigan native and artist Frank Gasparo, features a depiction of the state's famous Mackinac Bridge, which spans the strait connecting Michigan's upper and lower peninsulas. This massive engineering marvel was, and still is, a symbol of the state's connection to both its natural beauty and its industrial might. Alongside the bridge, a blue outline of the Great Lakes region was included, underscoring Michigan's importance as a hub of trade and travel via its waterways, while the design itself was stunning and showcased Michigan's historical and geographical significance. It was not without its controversies. Many collectors quickly noted an error in the design. The original design showed the Mackinac Bridge with a set of arches that were larger and more pronounced than in the final version of the quarter. The mistake was soon corrected, and the coins that had already been minted were recalled and altered, leading to a limited number of quarters in circulation featuring the original error. These rare early production Michigan quarters would later become one of the most sought-after and valuable coins in American numismatics. As with any coin, there were a number of factors that would contribute to the rarity and value of these quarters. First, and most importantly, was the error itself. The Mackinac Bridge, designed with an incorrect set of arches, would soon be noticed by collectors and coin enthusiasts. These early production quarters became highly desirable, as error coins often carry significant premiums in the marketplace. There's something inherently captivating about owning a coin that was struck in error, as it represents a rare mistake in the manufacturing process, a mistake that cannot be replicated or recreated. Over time, numismatists began to realize that certain 2004 Michigan State Quarters, particularly those from the early run that featured the erroneous arch design, were becoming incredibly scarce. The U.S. Mint had halted production of the coin with the error, and many of the flawed coins were quickly withdrawn from circulation. As is often the case in the world of coin collecting, rarity fuels demand, and these quarters soon became a hot commodity. Coin collectors were not the only ones to take notice. As the 2004 Michigan State Quarter entered the auction world, the prices started to rise. It wasn't long before a bidding frenzy ensued, as collectors clamored to own one of these rare coins. What had started as a relatively innocuous coin release now had the attention of the numismatic world, and the story behind the coin was quickly becoming a part of its allure. The Michigan 2004 quarter's price trajectory was unlike most other quarters produced in the series. It had become far more than just a part of a commemorative series. As more people realized the potential value of this rare error coin, the prices for the Michigan quarters skyrocketed. Auction houses began reporting increased interest, as rare specimens of the coin were fetching far more than face value. What makes the 2004 Michigan State Quarter even more intriguing is that, despite its inherent rarity, the coin is still relatively accessible in comparison to other error coins. While other coins in the 50 State Quarters series have come and gone, with certain errors vanishing into obscurity, the Michigan Quarter has maintained its prominence. It remains a shining example of the unexpected value that can be found in the world of coin collecting. In terms of condition, the 2004 Michigan State Quarter is most valuable when it's in near-perfect mint state. As with any coin, its condition plays a crucial role in its overall worth. Coins that have been well preserved over the years are considered to be the most valuable, while those that show significant wear from circulation tend to fetch lower prices. The rarity of the error coin, combined with its pristine condition, contributes to the coin's rising value, but what really sets the 2004 Michigan State Quarter apart from others in the 50 State Quarters program is the significance of the error and the story behind it. Collectors aren't just drawn to this coin for its beauty or rarity, they're drawn to the rich historical context that it represents. Michigan's connection to the Great Lakes, the Mackinac Bridge, and its role in the Industrial Revolution are all woven into the fabric of this coin. For many, owning a 2004 Michigan State Quarter is about more than just owning a piece of history, it's about possessing a coin that tells the story of a state and a nation. Now, let's get to the heart of the matter, the value of the 2004 Michigan State Quarter. As rare specimens of the coin began to surface in the numismatic marketplace, they quickly attracted attention from collectors, and their value soared. Some of the highest quality examples of the error coin have fetched impressive amounts, sometimes reaching staggering numbers at auction. In recent years, one such Michigan 2004 State Quarter, minted with the incorrect Mackinac Bridge design, was sold at auction for a jaw-dropping $128,000. That's right, a quarter originally worth just 25 cents was now worth more than $100,000, thanks to its rarity, the history behind its design, and the error in its minting. The collector who managed to secure that coin now owns a piece of American numismatic history, one that represents the very best of what coin collecting can offer. How did a quarter worth only 25 cents come to command such a hefty price tag? It's a combination of factors: the historical significance of Michigan's role in America's development, the scarcity of the early error coins, the allure of collecting rarities, and, of course, the fact that the error itself makes the coin a one-of-a-kind treasure. As we reflect on the story of the 2004 Michigan State Quarter, we can't help but marvel at the journey it took to get here. What was once a simple coin in circulation, quickly became a rare and valuable collector's item, one with a rich historical context and an unforgettable story. For those who were fortunate enough to spot the error and secure one of these coins, their reward has been immense. So, the next time you find yourself sorting through some change, take a moment to look carefully at your quarters. There may be a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered, a coin that, like the 2004 Michigan State Quarter, is worth far more than its face value. Whether it's the right design, a minor error, or just an iconic piece of American history, you never know what you might be holding in your hand. And as we've learned with the Michigan 2004 State Quarter, sometimes the most unexpected discoveries can lead to a treasure worth a staggering $128,000. In 1973, America was in a period of transition. The political landscape was shifting as the Watergate scandal loomed on the horizon, and the economy was going through a turbulent time. But amid all of this, something rather unique was happening in the world of American coinage. While the country was dealing with global uncertainties and domestic upheaval, the U.S. Mint was producing one of the most iconic coins in its history, the 1973 half-dollar. To most, the 1973 half-dollar might have seemed like just another coin in circulation. But in the hands of keen-eyed collectors and numismatists, it would become the subject of fascination and, eventually, one of the most valuable coins of its kind, the half-dollar, a coin that had been part of America's coinage system for centuries, was experiencing something of a renaissance in the early 1970s. By 1973, the U.S. Mint was still using the familiar design that had been introduced in 1964. This design featured the portrait of President John F. Kennedy, who had been assassinated a decade earlier. Kennedy's image, created by artist Gilroy Roberts, had become iconic and was now firmly embedded in American culture. On the reverse side of the coin, a depiction of the presidential seal, designed by Frank Gasparo, proudly sat, with the eagle holding an olive branch in one talon and arrows in the other, symbolizing peace and strength. The 1973 half-dollar coin's design wasn't the only thing that would attract attention, however. There was a specific aspect of the coin's minting process that would lead to its eventual rise in value. As with many coins, variations and subtle errors can occur during production, and it's often these errors that elevate a coin from being simply old to being something much more rare and desirable. In the case of the 1973 half-dollar, one particular error would define its value, an error that would, in years to come, see certain specimens of the coin fetch extraordinary amounts at auction. But before we dive into the specifics of this error, let's take a look at the broader context of the 1973 half-dollar's creation. Like all U.S. coins, the 1973 half-dollar was struck at one of the nation's three major mints, the Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, or the San Francisco Mint. For much of the 20th century, the half-dollar coin had been a staple of American currency. However, by the 1970s, half-dollars were becoming less common in everyday transactions. They were often seen as too large for casual use, and many people preferred to use quarters or dimes instead. Despite the declining circulation of half-dollar coins, the U.S. Mint continued to produce them in large quantities. In fact, in 1973, the U.S. Mint struck over 39 million half-dollars. These coins were intended for both general circulation and as collectible pieces, with proofs being specially minted for collectors. Yet, despite these large numbers, the 1973 half-dollar wasn't initially seen as a major collector's item. After all, with so many coins produced, they were still relatively easy to find. However, over time, collectors began to realize that the 1973 half-dollar had more to offer than first meets the eye. As coins circulated, some began to show signs of wear and unusual marks, signs that hinted at an underlying issue with the minting process. The errors were subtle at first, but as numismatists scrutinized the coins more closely, they began to uncover something extraordinary. It turns out that the 1973 half-dollar had a variety of subtle minting errors. One of the most significant was a misalignment of the die, which caused certain coins to be struck off-center. These off-center coins were rare, and because they didn't meet the usual quality standards of the U.S. Mint, they were often discarded or melted down. But some of these coins made it into circulation, and it wasn't long before collectors began to realize their potential value. An off-center 1973 half-dollar was something entirely different. It was a coin that told a story, a coin with a history. These were no longer just half-dollars, they were rare, collectible pieces of American history. As time went on, more and more collectors became fascinated by the 1973 half-dollar, especially those with off-center strikes. These coins were often highly sought after by numismatists due to their rarity and the unique appearance of the error. The more rare and unusual the coin, the higher the value. This is a principle that has driven the coin collecting world for centuries, but what is it that makes the 1973 half-dollar so special? Why is this particular coin, and its errors, worth so much more than other coins? To understand that, we need to delve into the world of coin collecting and the factors that contribute to a coin's value. There are several factors that determine a coin's worth: rarity, condition, historical significance, and, in the case of error coins, the nature of the error itself. The rarity of the 1973 half-dollar with the off-center strike is one of the most important factors contributing to its high value. Due to the large number of coins produced in 1973, the sheer volume of half-dollars in circulation meant that most of them were either spent or damaged. Only a small fraction of these coins were kept in pristine condition or caught by collectors. When the error coins were discovered, they were few and far between, adding an element of scarcity that made them highly desirable. In addition to rarity, the condition of the coin plays a major role in its value. A coin that has been kept in mint condition is worth far more than a coin that has been heavily circulated and worn down over the years. This is particularly true for error coins, where collectors prize those with the cleanest strikes and the clearest errors. The condition of the 1973 half-dollar directly influences its market price. The historical significance of the 1973 half-dollar is another reason for its appeal. The Kennedy half-dollar had already become an iconic symbol of American history, honoring a beloved president who was tragically assassinated in 1963. The 1973 half-dollar, produced a decade after Kennedy's death, serves as a reminder of the lasting legacy of President Kennedy's impact on the country. This historical connection adds an additional layer of appeal to the coin, making it not only a collector's item but also a piece of American history. But perhaps most importantly, the nature of the minting error itself makes the 1973 half-dollar so fascinating. Error coins have long been coveted by collectors because they represent a fluke in the production process, a mistake that, by its very nature, cannot be replicated. The off-center strike on the 1973 half-dollar is one of those rare errors that collectors chase with enthusiasm. It's a coin that didn't quite make the cut but, in doing so, became something extraordinary. As collectors continued to seek out these rare 1973 half-dollars, the prices began to climb. And then, something remarkable happened. One particular off-center 1973 half-dollar coin, in near-perfect condition, was sold at auction for a staggering $140,000. That's right, a coin that originally had a face value of just 50 cents was now worth a jaw-dropping $140,000. This wasn't an isolated case. Other 1973 half-dollars, especially those with unique errors and pristine conditions, began to fetch impressive amounts as well. How did a coin like this go from being a simple piece of currency to becoming one of the most valuable coins in the world? It's a testament to the fascinating world of numismatics, where rarity, historical significance, and the allure of the unexpected come together to create treasures that are worth far more than their original face value. For collectors, the 1973 half-dollar is now a symbol of opportunity. It's a coin that represents the unpredictable nature of coin collecting, how something as seemingly ordinary as a half-dollar can turn into a coveted treasure. And for those lucky enough to find one of these rare error coins, the reward is not just monetary, it's the thrill of holding a piece of American history in your hand. So, the next time you're sorting through your change, remember this: you could be holding a coin worth far more than its face value. It's the 1973 half-dollar with an off-center strike, the coin that started out as just another $quarter piece in circulation but now stands as a testament to the power of rare and unique American coins. And as we've seen with the auction prices of these coins, the 1973 half-dollar can be worth a staggering $140,000. If you have one in your collection, or if you happen to find one, congratulations, you might just have a small fortune in your hands. In the early 1980s, America was going through a period of significant change. The economic landscape was shifting, and the nation was still reeling from the effects of the 1970s energy crisis and inflation. Political turbulence, including the aftermath of the Watergate scandal and the transition into a new presidential era, was also part of the backdrop. Amidst these larger national changes, a coin was minted that would quietly enter the world of numismatics, yet it would become a rare, valuable treasure decades later. This coin? The 1982 half-dollar. On the surface, the 1982 half-dollar didn't seem particularly extraordinary. After all, the coin itself was a part of a series that had been in circulation for decades. It featured the familiar profile of President John F. Kennedy, whose likeness had graced the half-dollar since 1964, just after his tragic assassination. But, as with so many other coins in American history, it was the small details that would end up giving the 1982 half-dollar its special status in the world of coin collecting. Before we get into the specifics of the 1982 half-dollar's appeal, let's take a moment to reflect on the broader context of the coin. The U.S. Mint had been producing half-dollars since the country's founding, and the Kennedy half-dollar itself was a relatively modern entry into the world of U.S. coinage. The design was introduced just a year after President Kennedy's assassination, in 1964, as a way to honor his legacy. The portrait of Kennedy on the obverse, designed by artist Gilroy Roberts, was powerful and solemn, reflecting the respect the nation had for its fallen leader. On the reverse, the presidential seal, designed by Frank Gasparo, featured an eagle clutching arrows and an olive branch, symbolizing strength and peace. Over the years, the Kennedy half-dollar had seen several variations and design changes, but by 1982, the coin remained relatively unchanged. This consistency in design might have led many collectors to dismiss the 1982 half-dollar as just another coin. However, as history would prove, this particular year would contain more intrigue than most people realized at the time. So, what makes the 1982 half-dollar stand out in the world of numismatics? The answer lies in the subtle differences between this coin and other half-dollars of the same era, particularly when it comes to its minting process. One of the most important aspects of any coin's appeal is its rarity, and while the 1982 half-dollar was minted in substantial quantities, a few specific details would make certain examples of the coin stand out as truly rare and valuable. The first factor to consider is the coin's minting process. In 1982, the U.S. Mint produced the half-dollar at its primary mints in Philadelphia and Denver. While the vast majority of these coins were intended for circulation, a select number were produced as proofs, coins that were specially struck for collectors and were typically of higher quality. Proof coins are generally struck multiple times, which results in a sharper, more detailed design, and they are made with a mirror-like finish that enhances their appearance. For collectors, proof coins are often far more valuable than their circulation counterparts, which are struck once and lack the finer detail. While the 1982 half-dollar was produced in large quantities, it was during this time that a particular error would make its mark on the numismatic world. As with many other U.S. coins, errors in the minting process can lead to coins with rare, distinct characteristics that make them highly sought after. For the 1982 half-dollar, the error in question had to do with the production of the proof versions of the coin. In some cases, the minting process caused minor but significant variations in the design on the coin, especially with how the details of Kennedy's profile appeared. The most notable of these errors was a subtle misalignment during the minting of some proof half-dollars, which caused an unusual doubling effect on the engraving of Kennedy's face. This kind of error, known as double dies, happens when the dies used to strike the coin are not perfectly aligned, resulting in the design being imprinted twice in slightly different positions. These double dies are one of the rarest types of coin errors, and when collectors first began noticing the presence of these double die errors on the 1982 half-dollar, their value skyrocketed. The demand for these coins grew rapidly as numismatists and collectors alike recognized that these particular versions of the coin were exceedingly rare, making them much more valuable than the typical half-dollar. In fact, it wasn't long before auction houses began to report record-breaking prices for these 1982 half-dollars with double dies. Some of these coins were sold for prices far beyond their face value, sometimes fetching thousands of dollars, much higher than the mere 50-cent value they originally carried. But it wasn't just the rarity of these coins that made them so appealing. It was the story they told. A mistake in the minting process had led to the creation of something rare, unique, and valuable, a mistake that, in the world of coin collecting, could not have been more fortuitous. But the 1982 half-dollar's appeal wasn't confined solely to these double die error coins. The general interest in the coin grew as collectors realized that, despite the error coins being extremely rare, the 1982 half-dollar as a whole was a valuable collectible in its own right. The coin's historical significance, featuring the likeness of a beloved president who had been tragically assassinated, added another layer of meaning to its value. For collectors, the 1982 half-dollar was not just a coin, it was a symbol of American history, a piece of the nation's past frozen in time. Over the years, the 1982 half-dollar has continued to capture the imagination of collectors and investors alike. Whether it's the perfectly minted proof versions, the rarer double die errors, or just the plain, simple beauty of the coin itself, there's no denying that the 1982 half-dollar has earned a place of honor in the world of numismatics. And as with most coins in the world of coin collecting, the rarity and the condition of the coin will dictate how much it's worth. Today, the most valuable 1982 half-dollars are the ones with the most distinct doubling errors, those rare pieces that were produced during the minting process when the dies were misaligned. These particular coins, especially those that have been kept in pristine condition, continue to fetch impressive amounts at auction. Some have been known to fetch as much as $125,000, depending on the severity of the error, the quality of the coin, and the level of interest in the numismatic market at the time. Imagine holding in your hand a coin that originally had a face value of 50 cents, and yet, in its error form, could be worth as much as $125,000. It's a reminder that the world of coin collecting is full of surprises, and sometimes, what seems like a small, insignificant coin can turn into a treasure of immense value. So, where does that leave us today? With the 1982 half-dollar's value reaching such staggering heights, it's clear that the coin is more than just a historical artifact, it's a rare and highly sought-after treasure. Collectors, investors, and enthusiasts alike continue to seek out these rare coins, with the hope of securing one of these prized pieces for themselves. And for those who have already managed to find a 1982 half-dollar with a double die error, they're sitting on a true gem, one that could be worth far more than anyone could have imagined when the coin was first minted in 1982. As we've seen with the auction prices for these rare half-dollars, a coin that once held a mere 50-cent value can now command an astonishing $125,000. So, if you happen to come across a 1982 half-dollar, don't just toss it aside. Take a moment to examine it carefully, because you might just be holding a small fortune in your hands. The year was 1998, and America was experiencing a time of significant economic growth and technological advancement. The dot-com boom was in full swing, and the country was moving into a new era with the dawn of the Internet age. While the world was busy changing around them, one seemingly small event occurred that would ripple through the world of numismatics and create a valuable coin, the 1998 half-dollar. At first glance, the 1998 half-dollar might appear to be just another coin in circulation. It features the familiar, iconic profile of President John F. Kennedy, which had adorned the half-dollar since 1964, and the reverse shows the presidential seal with the eagle holding arrows and an olive branch. The design had remained largely unchanged for decades, and for the average person, the 1998 half-dollar would have seemed like any other half-dollar. Yet, as many experienced collectors know, there's more than meets the eye when it comes to numismatics. Before we dive into the specifics of why the 1998 half-dollar would become such a coveted treasure, let's set the stage by considering the historical and economic context of the time. The 1990s were a time of both optimism and change for the United States. Bill Clinton was in his second term as president, and the country was experiencing unprecedented levels of prosperity. The stock market was booming, especially with the rise of internet-based companies, and the economic growth that was taking place created an environment where people were increasingly looking for new ways to invest their money. For collectors, this was the perfect time to turn their attention to rare and unique coins. It's during such periods of prosperity that certain coins take on a newfound importance, and sometimes, even the most ordinary-looking coins can turn into gold mines. The 1998 half-dollar coin, struck at the U.S. Mint's Philadelphia and Denver branches, was not originally seen as an especially valuable piece. It was minted in large numbers, and like most half-dollars of the era, it was not widely used in everyday transactions. The coin had a face value of just 50 cents, and most of these coins ended up in people's pockets or jars, with little thought given to their potential for future value. But, as often happens in the world of coin collecting, time and attention brought the coin into focus, revealing hidden opportunities that no one had predicted. Now, let's talk about the minting process. As with any year of coin production, millions of 1998 half-dollars were struck for circulation. The majority of these were produced in Denver, where the Denver Mint was the primary facility for minting coins for general circulation. A smaller batch of coins was struck in Philadelphia, where proof coins were often minted, and special editions of coins for collectors were produced. But here's where the story gets interesting. The minting process sometimes leads to errors, sometimes subtle, sometimes striking, that can turn an otherwise common coin into a rare and highly coveted collectible. In the case of the 1998 half-dollar, there were specific factors that made certain coins more appealing to collectors, specifically a rare variety of error coins that had to do with the production of the half-dollar during this time period. You see, coin collectors often look for certain characteristics in their coins, things like proof quality, unusual minting errors, or variations that set one coin apart from another. The 1998 half-dollar was no different. In fact, during the production process, some coins were struck with misaligned dies, causing the design to be off-center or exhibiting doubling effects. This error, known as die misalignment, occurs when the die used to strike the coin isn't perfectly aligned during the minting process, causing the design to be slightly skewed or doubled. These errors, while subtle, caught the attention of astute collectors who began to realize that they were looking at something unique. The misalignment and doubling effects were rare occurrences, far rarer than the usual production of the coin. And as any serious collector knows, rarity is the key to value, but that wasn't all. The 1998 half dollar was produced during a time when certain variations in the design were more common than others. The Kennedy half dollar series had seen several design tweaks over the years, and each year's coins had slightly different characteristics. These small variations, such as differences in the positioning of the design or subtle changes in the details of the portrait, made certain 1998 half dollars more desirable than others. The half dollar, particularly in its proof form, also had a high level of detail and sharpness, making it especially attractive to those who prized coins with superior quality and aesthetic appeal. As collectors became more familiar with these unique variations, the value of the 1998 half dollar began to rise. However, it wasn't just the minting errors that were driving this price increase. The coin also had a strong historical connection. The 1998 half dollar was one of the final coins in the Kennedy half dollar series that had been minted in such large quantities for circulation. Over the years, the use of half dollars had steadily declined as people shifted toward using smaller denominations like quarters and dimes. As a result, coins like the 1998 half dollar, which had been produced in large numbers but were no longer commonly circulated, were starting to become rarer by default. Collectors who had once passed over these coins began to see their true potential. In fact, by the late 1990s and early 2000s, the interest in these half dollars had steadily increased, and a few rare pieces with minting errors were beginning to attract high prices. These coins, with their unique characteristics and historical significance, began to appear in auction houses, where they often sold for far more than their original face value. And here's where the story takes an exciting turn. One particularly well-preserved 1998 half dollar, featuring a distinct die misalignment and doubling effect, was sold at auction for an astonishing $116,000. That's right. A coin with a face value of just 50 cents was now worth over $100,000, all because of a rare minting error and its appeal to the right collector. The auction results sparked further interest in the coin, and other collectors started seeking out similar pieces, eager to find their own hidden gems. But how did such a transformation happen? How did a half dollar from 1998, a coin that most people would overlook, become so valuable? It's a reminder that in the world of coin collecting, the most ordinary things can sometimes turn into extraordinary treasures. The 1998 half dollar is a perfect example of how rarity, historical significance, and the right circumstances can combine to create a highly valuable piece of currency. What once was a simple half-dollar coin became a coveted artifact, a symbol of the unpredictable nature of the coin market, where the value of a coin can soar from face value to six figures with the right combination of rarity, condition, and appeal. The 1998 half dollar isn't the only coin in American history to have such a transformation, but it serves as a powerful reminder of the endless possibilities within the world of numismatics. A simple misalignment during the minting process, an error that might have seemed insignificant at the time, created a coin that would go on to captivate the world of collectors and coin enthusiasts. So, what's the takeaway here? If you come across a 1998 half dollar, take a closer look. Examine it carefully, because that ordinary coin may be worth far more than its face value. Whether it's the rare die misalignment, the doubling effect, or simply the coin's historical importance, the 1998 half dollar holds a special place in the world of coin collecting. And for those lucky enough to have found a well-preserved 1998 half dollar, you're sitting on a treasure, because, as we've seen with the recent auction prices, a coin with a simple face value of 50 cents can, in the right conditions, be worth an incredible $116,000.